Manchester United are getting a shiny new stadium at some point. We think that's the news so far. There are a lot of takes on this. Some reason, some really wild. We're going to break it all down next here on Pints and Punditry at the Pitchside Pub. We'll get to the renderings and the visuals and the finances and the news breaking in a second, but what has happened today is the story has come out that Manchester United, it appears, is going to be getting a brand new stadium. There are renderings, there are some details, it looks like it's happening, and we can get to all that in a second and break down the look of it and the feel for it and what it means historically and the easy jokes that are coming out of this rendering, but the big news is that it appears the decision has been made that Manchester United are moving on from Old Trafford to a big, shiny new stadium. And that is new information because up until this point, that has still been up in the air. And it feels like today that is now a final decision. And regardless of if these renderings are actually accurate for what the final product looks like or not, or what the cost is, or who's paying for any of that, that is a massive, massive shift in the footballing world that in 5 to 10 years, Old Trafford will no longer be the home of Manchester United. And that in and of itself is disappointing. You don't have to be a supporter of a club to appreciate the history there. And I'm a historian kind of guy in all sports. I would prefer the old stadiums get renovated and continue to be the home, and particularly in English football where you have these really old stadiums that have housed these clubs for so long. I would always prefer to see them renovated than be replaced. But that is not the way things are going. This is hardly the first old stadium to be replaced, and it will definitely not be the last. So, a sad day, but a monumental day, and one that was probably inevitable given the decisions or lack of decisions from Manchester United ownership over the years. We're going to get into that in a second, but before we do, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me down below so you can follow the channel. Get in the comment section whether you are a United supporter or not. What do you think of the new stadium? What do you think of the decision to build a new stadium? The renderings in general? What's being said about it, all of it. Get in that comment section. Let me know your thoughts. You can also leave comments on Twitter and Blue Sky at Pitchside Pub, and check out the website, pitchsidepub.com. So the renderings came out, and obviously when you attach a visual to a storyline like this, it becomes so much more real, and people can envision themselves at this stadium or around this stadium, and it is such a stark contrast to what they have at Old Trafford, which, admittedly is completely falling apart. And that's part of the problem here, right? I always loved the old historic stadium, but when they have been neglected for so long, it no longer becomes feasible to keep them up. It's like a car, you haven't changed the oil in, you haven't put new brakes in, you haven't put new tires on, and at some point it's just not realistic to try and fix it, and you just have to go ahead and replace it. And that stinks, but it's too far gone. And that, if blame wants to be placed, that's where the Glazers come in, having been the owners for a long time here and not properly investing in their stadium. Now, if you want to make accusations that they did that on purpose and purposely neglected Old Trafford so that they could get a bright, shiny new stadium built and justify it more, listen, I don't think you're wrong there. All right, I'm obviously not on the inside. I don't have any information that you don't have, but I wouldn't put it past them. I wouldn't put it past a lot of very wealthy owners to downgrade, to voluntarily allow their current situation to deteriorate, to then be able to replace it with something bright, shiny, and new. And frankly, it works, because the amount of people that would be okay with seeing Old Trafford go by the wayside and get demolished for a brand new shiny stadium 10 years ago is not nearly as many as would do it today, because you've been in the stadium, you see the things that are falling apart, and it's a very real justification. It's also one that probably could have been solved gradually over time. So it is the neglect by the Glazers to the stadium over the past decade and a half that makes this a more justifiable decision. There's also the caveat of who's paying for this. This looks like it's going to be over $1 billion project, well over $1 billion, because every time a new stadium gets built, they got to one-up the next one, right? It's got to be bigger, it's got to be grander, it's got to offer more amenities, it's got to have more technology, basically everything that doesn't have to do with the football on the pitch, because that's your same rectangle with some variations, right, in size, but that's the same commonality at every stadium. It's all the other crap around it that's different. It has to be bigger, better, more grand, make more money, generate more revenue for the club. Tottenham's project ended up being over $1 billion. That's the most recent one that has been completed in England. Everton's is just about done, and Manchester United is going to be even bigger and more grand than all of that because it's Manchester United, right? So they have to be. So we're looking at $1 billion plus. Who's paying for it? Well, listen, I don't know the ins and outs of English tax law by any chance, but I know what I'm reading here. What is coming out today is a lot of caginess, a lot of shadiness, a lot of non-definitive answers to that question. Who's paying for it? Well, we're not really sure yet. I'm telling you right now, that means not the rich folks, okay? The Glazers aren't shelling a ton of money out for this, and Sir Jim Ratcliffe is not shelling a ton of money out for this. I mean, maybe they have to put in a little bit here, a little bit there to save some face, but those guys are not paying $1 billion for this stadium. I'm telling you right now, rich people don't do that. They don't agree to do that. They get the tax breaks. They figure out a way to make the people pay for it. At the very least, maybe they take a loan, but I doubt it. This feels like the English people or the Manchurians or however it breaks down. Again, I'm not an expert in English tax law, but I've seen this play out in sports throughout the world. The rich folks aren't paying for it. I'm telling you that right now. So that remains to be seen, and that is a good argument for renovating Old Trafford, but it's also why it didn't happen, because the Glazers have not put any money into this club, which is why Manchester United fans want the Glazers out, and I get it. I don't blame you. Please don't make that to be that all American owners are bad. No, the Glazers are just cheap people who don't want to invest in the club. So, let's not lump them all in. So, we'll see who's paying for it, but I don't feel like that ends well for the Manchester United supporters. Let's just put it that way. Now, the renderings themselves, right? That's where this, people run wild with this, because that's the big news stories. Look at these big shiny pictures and these incredible renderings, which are getting more and more realistic every time this happens. It's really incredible. That's where everybody has a field day, and I get it. The visual is so cool, and these are stunning, stunning photos. This looks like one of the most cutting-edge stadiums in the world, right? If it's built like this. Now, you have to understand that this is a very early stage. They're talking about this being a 5 to 10 year project. So this is way down the road, and these may be the renderings that are approved, but things change. So the end result may not look anything like this. It also could look exactly like this. There's just so many variables that go into it. But the responses here have just been sort of so painfully obvious. They're almost not funny, but they are sort of funny, right? You see the 3 big spires over the stadium, and you can't help but look at that and go, well, that's a circus tent. And Manchester United, well, you probably ought to be under a circus tent right now. I mean, the headlines write themselves. This isn't exactly revolutionary comedy. You're building a giant circus tent for a club that's been operated like a giant circus over the past decade. So, hey, seemingly pretty fit. I get it. It does make you wonder if anybody in any of the boards or the management that have to approve these sort of things look at this and go, guys, we've been sort of a circus lately, and now we're building a giant circus tent. Guys, we're going to get demolished for this. It's like they don't have any common sense or any touch or feel. But hey, it looks beautiful. If they're not operated like a circus, maybe those jokes go away. But boy, it gives the headline writers some low-hanging fruit anytime they are bad. Speaking of low-hanging fruit, I have not seen a lot of this around. Maybe I just have a perverse mind. I'm going to try and keep this family friendly. But boy, when you see these renderings and you have the big stadium, the big round stadium over here, and then the long walkway of shops and restaurants, and boy, that looks like somebody's compensating for something. I mean, did nobody else notice this? I guess because there's 3 spires on the tent, not 2. It really helps, but boy, that looks like a real compensation. Okay, maybe that's just me, but that was one of the first things I saw when you saw the stadium and the long, narrow walkway, and I just went, well, somebody outlined that, and I think we're going to have to blur that on television. Maybe you don't have to blur that in England. I don't know. You'd have to do it here. But, the jokes sort of write themselves. But if we can look past some of the innuendos and inappropriate humor, it is going to be a revolutionary stadium, and it's going to have every bell and whistle and every new technology and every amenity. And now it's not just about the stadium. It's about the surrounding area and the shops and the restaurants and the retail and the fact that you can have a concert outside. And yes, for the average fan, that is going to destroy your game day experience. And for those of you, I sympathize, the long-time Manchester United season ticket holders, you've been going 30, 40, 50 years. This sucks. This sucks. I'm with you. I hate it. I would rather see them renovate Old Trafford, add what they can add, But this is going to have over 100,000 seats. Old Trafford's in the 70s. They said that they could max it out in the 80s. This is significant. And then you get all the extra revenue outside of it. Ideally, that goes to supporting the club. In reality, it could line the pockets of the Glazers and Sir Jim Ratcliffe. I don't know, but we've seen how these things play out. But theoretically, it could allow them to host concerts, host international matches, host musical events, and things that they couldn't do at Old Trafford, or host them bigger and in better ways. And it does allow them opportunities, and that should be more revenue for the club. That was the justification for Tottenham. So this is the way of the world. This is the way sports are moving forward, and unfortunately, this does feel somewhat inevitable. This is hardly the first historic stadium we've seen torn down, and it's not going to be the last. But it does suck. It does suck. It does take some of the culture out of it. Manchester United fans have been had some real easy targets to their cross-city brethren at Manchester City. Did I say City? Manchester United fans have had targets for Manchester City ever since they tore down Main Road and built the Etihad, and have said, it's soulless and it's not a great atmosphere. Now, of course, I would point you towards Manchester City's home record for that, but nevertheless, I understand what you're saying. You had a very old stadium with character, you tore it down, you built one of these, big sort of soulless spaceships. Well, you know what, United fans, welcome to the party, you're getting one too. And it happened at Real Madrid, it's happening at Barcelona, it happened, every one of these stadiums is at the very least getting a facelift that makes it look like this, if not getting completely replaced. And so, this is the way of the world. This is the way of the footballing world, unfortunately, but I still would rather have seen this happen to Old Trafford rather than a brand new stadium that looks like a big circus tent. Nevertheless, the news appears to be that it is in fact happening, and that means, short of taxpayers rejecting it and it falling on the Glazers who aren't going to foot the bill, it does look like there's nothing that can be done to stop it at this point. So, what do you like about it? What don't you like about it? Are you just going to accept it? Are you going to fight it tooth and nail? Are you giving back your season tickets? Are you done watching football? None of which I would believe, but get in that comment section anyway and let me know your thoughts on this stadium. What you think about it and what this means for Manchester United. Get in the comments. Let me know your thoughts. You can also leave comments on Twitter and Blue Sky at Pitchside Pub. While you're at it, hit that subscribe button for me down below so you can follow the channel and check out the website, pitchsidepub.com. Thanks as always for joining us here on Pints and Punditry at the Pitchside Pub.